My name is Vasil Petrov and I'm the founder of Lean Institute Bulgaria, a company which focuses on Lean and Six Sigma implementations with different companies. My career path started many years ago with a company that I was working for, and I started implementing some process improvement methods. At that time, I didn't really know what the process should be that I need to follow, and I was kind of learning by doing. What happened next is that through my MBA studies abroad, I kind of put my knowledge to the next level, and I started working for a very big international consulting company, what we call it a management consulting, which was or still is one of the best in the world in terms of achieving operational excellence with its customers. And then this became not only my work but also my passion. And here I am today working in Bulgaria and trying to support the Bulgarian businesses with my colleagues to be better in their continuous improvement journeys. The Six Sigma Green Belt is the full program of Six Sigma in terms of steps that we need to follow. And there is a difference between yellow belt and green belt, and probably a little bit of smaller difference between the green belt and black belt in terms of content that we need to cover. Why is that so? Because the difference between yellow and green would be the material that we need to cover in terms of the whole approach, from define to measure, analyze, improve and control. We need to cover it all in green belt. Same is for black belt, but the depth of the content is much more, and we also have some additional things that we need to speak about. Now, what is important about the green belt? So let's start with the define phase. The define phase in green belt is where we talk about the types of projects that we need to prioritize from. We need to understand what is the business case. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve? How can we identify those problems? We also meet for the first time some of the tools that are being used for prioritization. We also learn what are the metrics that Six Sigma is using and what is Six Sigma in general. Why do we call it Six Sigma at all? Then after we have created our project charter, this is the document that our project will start with, and after we cover the financial aspect of the whole journey that we're going to have, we need to move to the measure phase. In the measure phase, we need to know that the system that will be providing the information to us is the correct system, that the data that we'll be basing our conclusions on will be the right data. So we are learning how to do this. We're also learning how to measure the capability of our processes. We need to understand what are the inputs which are impacting the output metric, what we call it the primary metric of our process. Then in the analyze phase, what we do is we start a little bit to work with hypothesis testing. And it might sound a little bit hard to some of you, but at the end of the day, it's really not that complex. It's just about what type of data do we have and what is the best way to put some hypothesis based on the type of data that we have to understand if a particular set of inputs is significantly different from another one, or if we can significantly find a difference between two different samples. This is a great foundation for those of you who want to go a little bit deeper into the problems that we're trying to solve. In the improve phase, we already have narrowed down all the input factors, the axes, what we call them, to the vital few. And in this phase is where we start to experiment. We call this design of experiment. The purpose of this is to make sure that we are using the best setting for the input value in order to, in combination with the others, to maximize the output that we are aiming at. And when we say maximize, it's not always about getting the most output. In Six Sigma, we are actually striving for reducing the variation in the output. So we want to have a more consistent and stable process at the end of the day. That's why we're also looking at the data short-term versus long-term, because we want to make sure that different causes of problems will be eliminated in the process, and we want to compare the different time frames as well. Once we are ready with the design of experiments and we already know what the best setting is for our inputs, then we need to move to the last phase, which is the control phase. What happens there is that we want to control our success. We want to control our new process. And that's why we learn what is a statistical process control. This is where we learn several charts. It might sound a little bit complex, but it's not. This is just several charts that are being used, again, based on the data that you have, based on the process that you have. We'll also talk about lean on the way, in the beginning, in the define phase, a little bit in measure phase, and also in the control phase, where lean will be giving us some of its tools to control the process better and to understand where the wastes in the process are, so that we can easily work on those quick wins, what we call them. With that, we need to, of course, make sure that the entire documentation for the process is also ready. We have 5 different types of documentations that we need to prepare, to put it that way. And once we are ready with the whole pile of the whole summary of everything that we have done throughout our journey, which sometimes goes even beyond 6 months, then we can say we are completely ready. We can store it, and then we can move to the next project. And that's it in a nutshell.